All right, everybody, welcome to episode 76 of Culper's Canteen Cup. Make sure you have your sham wows out, plenty of towels, washcloths, any type of soaking instrument because we're about to spill haterade all over your dash or your phone or whatever computer, whatever you're listening to this on or watching on YouTube. There's going to be a lot of haterade in this episode, I'm telling you, because it was a week of hate. This last week was a week of hate in the cup. If you're following the blog, you might have seen some messages we were sending back and forth, and it was pretty humorous. We don't even realize it's funny while we're doing it most times, but I'd encourage you to go over to www.culperscanteencup.com and check out the blog, check out the site. Putting some stuff up there, trying to get some more content in there, and we're enjoying it so far. I hope you guys are too. Yeah, man, it's. I had a good Christmas. I want to put out some COVID information, not disinformation,
Rona.
not information, just facts. Just facts. That's it. So, without going all HIPAA with it, a very close acquaintance of mine, close, intimate acquaintance of mine, I only have one of those in my life right now, had COVID in November of 2020. Went ahead and got vaccinated, thinking it would be easier to travel. It wasn't, but doesn't matter. She had COVID, got vaccinated, fully vaxxed, and got COVID again over Christmas and New Year's. So I'm just throwing that out there. Also, there's another family member of mine who's fully vaccinated, got COVID over the holidays. So I'm just putting that out there. I guess it's possible to get it after you've been vaccinated. Hopefully we don't get canceled for me stating those very obvious facts. But otherwise, I mean, it's a good new year. 2022 has started off pretty crazy. So, Roger, what are your initial thoughts on 2022 before we start spouting the haterade all over the place?
Well, I did see a meme the other day, and it was pretty clever because they're like, "Wait till people find out that 2022 is 2020 TOO." So it's it's hey, is this going to be your replay of like 2020 and then all the way back into 2021 because the last couple of years have seemed to have just all been pushed together and for those out there that may recognize a little bit of a different background, so I'm traveling. I think it's actually the first time I've been able to do this in my travel trailer because we have some pretty good Wi-Fi out here in Savannah, Georgia. But I think as far as the new year, dude, I'm excited. I'm stoked. I mean, it's but what you got going on with Rona, now we're going into election time. I think Josh and I were kind of going back and forth a little bit on the SCOTUS briefings, and so we'll touch a little bit on that. But I guess first I want to, I guess we should throw it out there, right? Well, let me do a shout out real quick. Carlton Zeus, intro music. Thank you. www.carltonzeus.com. Check it on Apple Music. Also, quick shout out to a buddy, Andrew, getting ready to deploy again, probably for like the upteenth time, going back down range. I'm sure it's not to anywhere like Hawaii or anywhere cool, but he's a pretty avid listener to this program, and hopefully he's safe and
Well, it's
comes
not
back all in one
Syria.
place.
It's not Iraq because Biden said we're pulling everybody out of Iraq on January 1st. So we know it's not
It
there.
can't be Iraq. It can't be Afghanistan because there are no more Americans in Afghanistan. Oh, I'm sorry, except for those 500 that are still left over there. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're going to throw him on the border of Ukraine or something like that. They'll throw Andrew out there and like he is the one lone U.S. person on the border of like Ukraine and Russia. If you kill him, then we're going to war or whatever. But I guess what started man, he talking about haterade. I don't even know where to begin this thing because we got the whole Jack Murphy thing. Right, which I wasn't a big follower of Jack Murphy. I think Luke, you and Josh had brought it up before, and, and Luke's typing that Josh is already looking pissed. We just say Jack Murphy and he's already pissed off, and then we get on the Jack Murphy thing, and then there's some followers that we have, or not that we have, they don't follow us because they don't give a shit, but we follow them, or at least used to follow, because at the end of the day, it's not that you're going to agree with everything, but you want people to be real. And I think one thing with us, I think we're real. I mean, we do push each other's buttons, and that was one of the points of shooting out that blog with the text, because to give some context, so we have a group text, right? Obviously, and you know what? We actually call it C3. So we've got the three of us on this text, and throughout the day we chat and text back and forth. and we push buttons. And of course, you know how it is over text, right? There's no you can kind of eliminate a lot of context. There's no intonation, there's no tone of voice. You just got to kind of take it for what it is, outside of like using all caps or whatever. The other thing is we are all three in different time zones, so it's normally we talk a lot of shit throughout the day. And we decided to post this thing because I had gone to sleep. I have a couple texts in there and I'm like, all right, peace out. I go to sleep. I wake up in the morning and there's like 75 unread texts. So I'm like, all right, so let me pull this thing up. Let me start reading through this stuff. And then all I see is Josh is like, F everybody. At the end of it, he should have just been like, F everybody. I'm like, what the heck, man? Now this has gone over. This is, actually, spanned a couple of days because it started off with the Jack Murphy, and I'll kick it to Josh here in a second, but it started off with Jack Murphy. Again, I'm not a big follower, so you can give some more insight to it. But basically, he's supposed to be like the man's man, right? He's like this big burly dude, big gnarly beard, and I'm the alpha male, and the silverback, and whatever the hell else he wants to be. And he wrote this article. Basically, he's sending his girlfriend out like on Tinder dates to get nailed by some other dude. So he's a cuck, right? Like a legit one. And he starts teeing off with some reporters that ask about it, which legitimately, I mean, he publishes. You are a public, figure with a lot of followers. I don't know how many followers he has. Josh can, go into that, but a lot of followers. He put something out there publicly. People want to ask him questions on it, and then he gets all pissed off. But then, everybody wants to start covering for him, and nobody really wants to address it. And the problem with this is, one, people stop being real. And then the second piece is it's because they know him or because they're friends with him, they're scared to shoot him straight. So I'll kick it to Josh and kind of let him go off on the Jack Murphy thing, and then we can go into how he hates John Adams, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson. Who else did he hate? There are a couple other people in there that he hated. Who just passed away? Sidney Poitier. You weren't a big fan of him either. A couple other folks. So Josh, you want to kind of give some history on the Jack Murphy thing, and we'll go from there, man.
All right. Let's see. First, I want to do some. First, I want to get a couple of shout outs because if I don't do it now, I'll forget about it because I'm going to get heated, and it's just it's not going to happen. I want to make sure we give some folks. So, shout outs first off, Isaac over at the Cajun Conservative. Hey, appreciate what you do. Thanks for listening. Tyler up in Northern Virginia. Hey man, hope your surf trip to Costa Rica went well. Glad to have you back. Big Game James over in the Middle East at an undisclosed location, doing great things for God and country. Absolutely not Iraq or Afghanistan because we don't have Americans there. And Joe over in West End, I noticed you posted a Facebook comment here a week or so ago that has only been mentioned on here. So I know you're listening, secretly listening without telling anybody. It's all good. Hey, when you get a chance, everybody, if you're on the Insta Faces, go over and give Task Force Bourbon a follow. It's a red-blooded American patriot running a Instagram page, and all he does on it is tell you his taste and review all the different bourbons out there. So Task Force Bourbon. Hey, John, I really appreciate you running that page and do what you do, man. You've opened up a couple of new bottles to me that I wasn't aware of, and hopefully one day we can link up and share it pour. So Jack Murphy. Jack Murphy was one of these guys I stumbled across on Twitter, because he runs in the same circles as Tim Pool, Jack Pacific. Did I pronounce that right this time, Luke? All right, almost there. All right, one day I'll get there. So he runs in these circles, and Roger spot. He portrays himself as this, this man's man. He is. This is. He passes himself off and portrays himself as, this is what a model man should be, right? To the point to where, he's given speeches around the country. He's talking. He's got this big burly black and white beard. I mean, look, his beard is legit. Like I'll give him that. I won't take that away from him. And so it kind of started when, so he wrote this article years ago, and yeah, like Roger pointed out, he'd send his girlfriend out on Tinder dates, and then she'd come back and tell him all about it. And all right, fine, man. If that's your thing, that's your thing. Like, whatever, right? I don't care about that. But when you turn around and you try and pass yourself off as a role model and a man's man and stuff like that, I'm not buying that. And so here's the other part. He was on Tim Pool, and he brought up the fact that they started talking about younger girls, and he was like, well, when they're 15, they're basically grown. And he was inferring that basically once girls, turn 15, well, they're kind of, age doesn't matter. All right. So anybody with any level of morality, that's where you draw your line. You're like, okay, I'm done with this dude. You know, and so he goes on to this other interview. This female reporter asked him about this article that he published on the internet, right? He put it out on the internet. He willingly put it on the internet. And she asked him about it, and he cooks off on this poor girl. Like, he straight cooks off on her. It's like, F you for asking me that, this, that, and the other, blah, blah. And so he started protecting his tweets on Twitter. His account's protected. You can't see his tweets unless he, personally authorizes it, because that's what a man would do. A man wouldn't stand by what he says and stand by his word. A man wouldn't, say, nope, I said it, and I don't care what you think. This is what I believe. A man would do that. Well, this dude ain't a man. This guy he's a scourge of the earth. And
does he drink? He had to be drunk when he wrote that article, right?
Dude, I have no idea.
He had to
man. I have no idea. So this guy, and he starts going down this, you can't tell me what to do. You can't say this. You can't say that. I can say what I want. But then he hides behind, protecting his tweets. And then you have these people like Tim Pool start defending him. Tim Pool, and most of you guys have heard us reference him, him on here before. We follow the guy. We like the dude. Dude seemed to be a legitimate journalist. He would report, hey, here's what's happening. Here's what's going on. You decide what you think about it, right? What the media should be doing. Well, the people who kind of brought Jack Murphy to prominence and gave him a platform, once this guy comes out and starts, it becomes apparent what he's doing. And then he makes a comment about, well, when they're 15, they're really grown, and basically infers that they're fair game. Nobody bucks up against that. Like, not one of these people, Tim Pool being the main one, because he was on his show. He didn't even challenge him then when the guy made the comment on his podcast. And so I'm at that point to where I am done with people who are not real. There's enough fake shit in the world. We don't need any more fake shit. Just be real. That's fine. Just be real. I would totally respect Tim Pool if Tim Pool would have come out and said right then, like, hey man, no, we obviously don't support that. We don't condone that. And we're going to cut ties with this individual. And that's that. Like, all right, cool, man. Like, you took a stand. And he didn't. He didn't even take a stand on the other, going the other direction, saying, no, we absolutely support this and we condone it. He just ignored it, which to me is worse than condoning it. It's just zero spines. And so, you guys, if you head over to the blog, you read our text messages, it just kind of went downhill from there. And I'm going to kick it over to Luke. And Luke can talk about his, his senator from his state and what the comment that he made the other day. And, it just continued this, it continued this diatribe and this hate on, people not, not standing up, and people not taking a stand, people not having a spine. So
I'm gonna save that one. I'm gonna maybe address that toward the end. Let Roger take it over with with the Ted Cruz situation, because I think that's when you really started to cook off, which was great. And it is a discussion worth having, because I do have quite a bit to say on it. But I like to table that for now and kind of back it up to my views on Jack Murphy and Tim Pool for now, and kind of maybe expand a little bit more on both of those individuals. I mean, you've heard me say, if y'all been listening to the podcast, a few of y'all from day one. I was a big fan of Tim Pool, plugging him all the time, along with Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, these independent journalists who are out there, seeming to fight the good fight. And, I first learned about Jack Murphy on Tim Pool. Jack Murphy came in, he was saying some stuff that made sense. So I started listening to Jack Murphy. I listened to probably about 5 of Jack Murphy's podcasts, and that's where I discovered Kash Patel was on Jack Murphy's podcast. And Kash Patel, I don't know, I don't want to get too much into him. He's just, maybe we could talk about him in the future. He's a very interesting guy. He was the Pentagon chief of staff in the last days of the Trump presidency, headed up with Devin Nunes. They were, before he was Pentagon chief of staff, he was heading up the counter investigation of Russia collusion. And he's just super smart guy. He doesn't have a social media presence. He's just, that guy's going to be involved in he'll be the chief of staff for a president someday. There's just no doubt. He's that kind of dude. But anyway, so I listened to a few of Jack Murphy's podcasts, and Jack, I just couldn't get with it. Although he said a lot of stuff I agree with, there's a brand going around right now, a fad of these masculinity podcasts, masculinity figures, bring back masculinity. And I'm not saying that they don't have a point, because I do think that there's a place for masculinity in this world. I do think it's been degraded over the last 2 decades. But it's like these guys get on and they just have this cult following, and the stuff they say is, about being masculine, control your woman. And it's like, y'all go a little bit too far. I mean, I don't know. It just kind of creeped me out. So I stopped listening to Jack Murphy. I was just like, well, it's Jack Murphy. I actually stopped following him on Twitter because he just says some kind of weird stuff sometimes. And, then the whole thing happened with, okay, well, back up a little bit. I looked into Jack Murphy after I listened to the Kash Patel podcast, and I saw that this guy's brand is his masculinity, and he has a society called the Liminal Order. And for only $99 a month, you can join the Liminal Order, and it's limited to only 10 new members a month, and you have to go through a screening process to get in it. And he talks about this Liminal Order like the most important people in the United States are in it, and it's a real networking opportunity. And I'm like, huh. And the more I really looked into it, I delved into that website, and I'm like, yeah, this is a scam. Maybe it's a networking thing, but I ain't gonna pay. Who would pay $1,200 a year to be part of a group that promises nothing and gives nothing? So yeah, I don't know. The whole thing happened like Josh laid it out with Jack Murphy, and Roger covered it too. And the first thing, Roger woke up one morning, read all our messages, and he's like, "What is up with this Jack Murphy dude?" And I was like, "Look at this video." And Roger said, "Well, are you guys upset that he teed off on the hosts of that podcast, or are you upset at what he did?" I was like, I understand, I guess, the teeing off on the podcast host. I think that was poor taste. What he said and how he said it to that female was just like, okay, yeah, you're masculine, all right. I was upset that his brand is masculinity, and he's a literal cuck. And it's like, and the way he handled it, it's like, man, and this is kind of the root of this podcast for me, is if Jack Murphy would have come out and said something to the effect of, yeah, and it's not just the post he made about being a cuck and sending his chick out on, Tinder dates to do the deed. There are pictures of him out there doing some unspeakable acts to himself, which are very disgusting. Keep it somewhat family friendly here. It's just disgusting. If he would have come out when confronted with that and say, you know what? That was 7 years ago. I have grown as a person. That is not me anymore. I realized the mistake. Here's why it's a mistake. And here's why I'm a better person. Here's why you should listen to me. Because if he would have explained himself, even if he didn't mean it, just say, look, man, that ain't me anymore. We all screw up, cast the first stone, all this stuff. But he didn't. He didn't do that. He got defensive and tried to hide it. It was ridiculous. And some of the stuff he was sending out to the liminal order, there's some screen grabs of that. Oh, man. Dude trying to do damage control. It was just so disappointing. And to Josh's point, it's like, Tim Pool, you're just not going to say anything about it? Nothing? Nothing at all. Because he's your friend? Don't know, man. And Tim Pool has this thing. And for those of you who aren't familiar, if we had a YouTube channel that, we were making a lot of money off of, there's a little thing called a super chat. And you can pay to actually send a chat out during the podcast. And maybe they'll read it, maybe they won't. So tons of people pay to send these chats during the show. And he'll read some of the chats during the show. And man, after that Jack Murphy stuff came out, or while Jack Murphy was there, all his super chats were all about, hey, when are you going to call this dude out? When are you going to call this dude out? And he would not say anything. He kind of addressed it, and they talked about it for a moment. And I think that was about 2.5 weeks ago, but he just didn't address it. And the dude is he's got to be bleeding followers. He lost one with me. He's got almost 1 million followers still on Twitter. That's a lot. So he's got to be bleeding followers. And then as this stuff is blowing up, and on the Tim Pool IRL live podcast, 2 nights ago? Thursday night. It was Thursday night. They happened to get swatted. And for like Elaine and my parents, if you don't know what swatted is, it's where somebody calls the cops, has your address, someone else calls the cops and says, hey, there's a hostage situation at Josh's house. 2 people have already been killed. You need to get over here quick. And they'll hang up. And man, the cops send the SWAT team to the house. And the SWAT team will kick down the door, enter, and it's a dangerous situation because they think they're walking into like a hostage or a murder type situation. So Tim Pool just happened to get swatted the day after he had Marjorie Taylor Greene on. The person he had on his show that night was a current or former law enforcement officer. And they said, well, the only reason we're still alive is because people are in the driveway. Tim Pool's employees were in the driveway when the SWAT team pulled up and they were able to explain. And I'm like, I'm not saying that's a scam, but it sure does seem suspicious. You're bleeding followers. I just unsubscribed. And then my Twitter blows up with Tim Pool got swatted live. And I'm like, oh, dude, I smell a rat. If you look into the story, I don't know if Roger followed it, but to me, it seemed a little strange. Ted Cruz, I guess we can go down this path if Roger doesn't have anything else to say about Jack Murphy or Tim Pool, but I'll let Roger do the Ted Cruz thing. And Josh is chomping. He is so excited, man. Oh, go ahead, Roger. Take it away.
It goes on to the broader topic. And on the Tim Pool thing, like I don't follow his podcast at all, but I did see it come across his Twitter. I was on the Twitter going through it, and when he actually posted, we just got swatted. And I'm just like, dude, it's like the oldest trick in the book, right? Oh, look at this shiny ball over here. Look at this shiny ball. Never mind. Because I tell you, with the whole 15-year-old thing, I mean, that's enough for me. That right there is enough for me. It's like, hey, man, even like Luke, like what you said, or maybe it was Josh, that at that time when you say that, it's like, hey, like 15-year-olds, like, really, dude? Like, yeah, I'm not into that, and it's kind of illegal. That's how I think I would probably approach that. And then off air, I'm like, hey, man, look, dude, you can't be bringing that shit on the air. I don't want you on the show if that's what you're into or whatever. And to what Luke was saying with the whole, cucking, and we're not talking about, figurative. We're talking about literal, right? So you guys and gals can go out there and look it up. You're not in, if you don't know about it, but he could have actually used that as a stepping stone off to why he started his podcast and his, quote unquote way of life, right? Because it definitely does not complement or is definitely not congruent with, his alpha male. And he's like, I bet you're drinking Black Rifle. You know what? I tell you what, dude. And I think the factory is here, right? So you get me off on a tangent. I think the Black Rifle Coffee Company factory is here, or one of them is here with the 9 line. They get the big warehouse and this and that. And I refuse to go there to it. They've got a shop downtown here on the Riverwalk, and I refuse to go into that one as well. They piss me off. But yeah, it probably is what Ted Cruz drinks. But Jack could have used that to really give a basis or a reasoning why he started what he did. Hey, you know what? This wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my life. I found I was weak, yada, yada, yada. And he could have gone down that whole spiel, right? He could have done that for weeks. Just admit to it. This is what it is. And then with everything else going on, it just blows over. And then you see the thing with the news reporter where he just cooks off on her. Like, if that chick has a boyfriend, he should be whipping his ass. Okay, because he completely teed off on her with something that he put out in the public domain. And then you go on Tim Pool, and I didn't see it, but going from what Luke and Josh were saying, it's like, they really didn't denounce it, didn't really condone it. It's just kind of, and that's where the Ted Cruz came up, and not just Ted Cruz, Posobiec. We talk about, then we got into Tucker Carlson, and then we just went on down the road here, and that's where Josh started cooking off on everybody. You had Ted Cruz, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Josh, but he called it a terrorist event, right? So the 6th January, not the peaceful protest side, but the folks who actually stormed the Capitol. He said I think it was domestic terrorism. I'm like, really? Oh, that's right. He called it a terrorist attack. So he's like, really? So then he goes on Tucker Carlson, and I guess this is what kind of takes us down the chain. So then he goes on Tucker Carlson, and Tucker calls him out on it. He's like, well, I had a very poor choice of words, and and I've always said it since day one, man. Ted Cruz has just got that car salesman, vibe about him with me anyway. And so he's like, well, it was a poor choice of words. And Tucker cuts him off, good on him. He's like, no. He's like, hold on. Your background in law, he's like, you are very specific with every word that you choose. I mean, there was no way that you just threw something out there like the word terrorist is pretty serious, to use that, right? Or at least it used to be until, a lot of the folks on the extreme left and right started using that. But it's right up there with the comparison, like with, every time you, Nazis and this and that, it begins to lose its luster or what have you, or lose its effect. But, basically calls it a terrorist attack. He's like, no, wait a minute. I think you're very, selecting in the words that you choose, the specific meaning. And he just kind of hems and haws through it. And it's like, okay, so now I get this feeling that Ted Cruz he's trying to play both sides. He's a politician, and it just pisses us off. Yeah, articulate. It just pisses us off because now you're just playing both sides. Either A, say I effed up. It was a poor choice of words. And he tried to say that, but it was that Ted Cruz. Well, I may have just like, hey, dude, I effed up. These people are not domestic terrorists. They're not. It wasn't a terrorist attack. It wasn't an insurgency. That I was put on the spot. The interview caught me off guard, whatever. And I'd use some words that I typically would not use to describe that, or whatever. There's a million other things, but he comes off as very phony. And so it's like, hey, so you're trying to play the left and the right. And so it's like, okay, you're trying to be conservative, but then you're trying to appease some of the folks on the left for some agenda down the road. And then that's when Josh cooked off on him, was like, F Ted Cruz. Then we started talking about Tucker Carlson because we're like, well, and I can't believe that the networks haven't covered this. Like, so I like Tucker Carlson generally. I like his show. I used to watch it fairly religiously because he seemed to be a pretty straight shooter, and maybe he still is. I don't know, but it wasn't until a couple weeks ago that I realized that him and Hunter Biden have a personal relationship. Hunter Biden actually wrote a letter of recommendation for one of Tucker's kids. Like, where was that at? Or was it vice versa? Anyway, letter of recommendation. They're family friends. They know each other. They're, beer drinking buddies. I don't know if they did anything beyond that, but it's like, where is that at? And I can't believe the left hasn't jumped all over this stuff. So it just comes back. It's like everybody that's in politics, and it's not even politics. It's like it's almost every single public figure, there just aren't real folks out there anymore. They're placating to the masses, whatever. It's like Vice, President, Harris or President Joe Biden, where you, or even Barry did this, where you govern by polls. Let me see what the people want this week. Let me see what the people want next week and what they wanted last week. And that's kind of how we'll do it. And that's what they spew out there. And it just pisses me off because it's like, hey, just call it what it is. He should have come out very early, like especially with all the news with Hunter Biden, the laptop and the crack and this and that and all the videos that came out, years of this stuff, right? Over a year of it. And this is the first we're hearing of it. It's like, hey man, why wouldn't you address this up front? And then it makes me wonder, it's like, well, Tucker is kicking everybody's ass as far as the networks go, and Fox is in general when it comes to the evening television. But then it makes me wonder, it's like, Josh, why is the media jumping all over his ass? I mean, why aren't they? I mean, if I was CNN or MSNBC or whatever, dude, I'd be bringing that up, right? Because I mean, Fox isn't scared to throw the mud that way. I mean, they will smear CNN and MSNBC or whatever, but it just takes you back to one thing that I think we've been pretty clear about here is, principle wise, I think all three of us here, we're on the conservative side. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're Republicans on every issue. It doesn't necessarily mean that we hate all Democrats, although it's becoming tougher to like any of the Democrats because the Democrats, this left that they've got right now is way farther left than what it was. But that conversation when Josh started talking about F everybody, that's and talking about Luke's senator. So now he's like, okay, well, he's in the primary. Do you vote for him? And Josh's like, F that dude. F no, I ain't voting for that dude. So it's like, well, then who do you vote for? Because you're not going to vote for the Democratic candidate. You don't vote for Ted Cruz. And that's how you get Clinton in the office the first time, right? And that's how you get Bush in the office, or Clinton in office and Barry in office. It's hey, you start to split this stuff up too much. Folks don't show up at the polls. You start voting for, Gary, what's Aleppo Johnson, the other Greenpeace, Tea Party candidate, whatever. And that's what ends up happening. That's how you get these folks in office. And Josh, of course, being a man of principle, he's like, F them all. I just fucking stay home. And I was like, hey, at the end of the day, I think this is, and of course, we're all pushing buttons, but at the end of the day, it's like, hey, and this is the way I look at it. And, Josh reminds me a lot of my son because my son's like, it don't matter anyway because they're both D-bags and whatever. I'm like, I get it. But I'm like, hey, here you have two choices, right? You've got two choices. One of the two are going to win. And I got it. They're both turds. But maybe one that's the little bit, lesser of a turd, that's who you have to vote for. And that's politics in general. I think when you go back to the founding fathers and we were talking about that, and then he started saying F John Adams and F Thomas Jefferson because he owned slaves and F Abraham Lincoln. So I'll kick it over to Josh for his defense on all that stuff, or maybe Luke. But, that's how we got to the text that we had, that I woke up to with 75 of them in a row. Of pretty much, I'm like, I was actually just getting to the point where I was just checking for my name. Did he say, F Roger? Because at that, the podcast would have been over. But, on real quick though, before you respond, so I didn't know you can I don't know, it'd be pretty embarrassing. I didn't know you could actually do would you call the chat thing where you can pay to chat or something like that?
Yeah, super
What do you call
chats.
that?
Super chats. Yeah, you got to be live on YouTube, and I think it's a pay. It's a YouTube feature, I believe. But super chats. We'd probably get, I don't know, 5, 6
maybe
cents
one day if we have some followers, one day we'll get on YouTube. And of course, what's going to end up happening. We're going to go on YouTube. We're going to turn on the super chat feature, and it's going to be I'm not saying I ever did this, but when you have friends that put stuff on eBay and you have to self bid to kind of jack it up a little bit, that's what's going to end up happening. It's going to be Josh in the super chat. He'll be like, Luke, you suck. Go F yourself. Whatever. So anyway, Josh, what's your thoughts on that, man?
All right. So
why do you hate Thomas Jefferson? Let's start there.
So you can go back and check the game tape. It's literally on the internet for everybody to see. I never said I hate Thomas Jefferson. Right. So why did Donald Trump get elected? Either one of you, just real quick, 10 seconds. Why did Donald Trump get elected?
Man.
Populism.
Yeah.
Right.
Populism.
Populism. Because that, and when Donald Trump said something, he didn't come back and apologize for it. Right? But Donald Trump said something, and he stood, generally speaking, he stood by what he said.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I know this is the definition of populism, but mainly his principles were popular, right? I mean, that's just that was what in line with and how he operates, like Josh is saying.
Right.
That's what people wanted to see, and they liked to hear what he said.
Yeah, but people knew that what he said, he was going to do. When he said, I am going to build a wall. When he campaigned on, I'm going to build a wall. People knew, and he did. He literally started building the wall, right? So when you have politicians, and this is on either side of the aisle, who come out and you think about how hyperbolic the language has been the last, ever since the 2016 election, right? Ever since 2016, Trump supporters have been Nazis, they've been white supremacists, they've been racist, they've been terrorists, they've been this, that, and the other. And then when Joe Biden came into office, Joe Biden's like, all right, we're going to have some unity and blah, blah. Hey, no, dude. Because guess what? Because you just spent the last 4 years calling me a Nazi, calling me a racist, and calling me a terrorist. No, there's not all of a sudden, there's not unity. That's not how this shit works. So a couple days ago, you have Ted Cruz sitting in the Senate, and he comes up and is like, it's a solemn day. It's, an anniversary of the terrorist attack on the Capitol, right? That's his quote. Terrorist attack on the Capitol. I'm sorry. Well, for starters, one, nobody has been charged with terrorism. Nobody has been charged with insurrection. You know why? Because it wasn't effing either. It wasn't a
FBI
terrorist
came out,
attack.
right? Didn't they say
Yeah.
it wasn't?
It came in and said it wasn't an insurrection. And and you can get into the details of who was the guy that was going to take over the government. 100%. Was it the guy in the loincloth and the Viking helmet, or was it the really fat kid with the ho-hos and Twinkies in his pocket? Like, which one was going to defeat the United States military, and take over the U.S. government? Anyway, but you have Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz, and Tucker was absolutely correct when Ted's like, I misspoke. Like, Ted Cruz is one of the most articulate senators in the room. He is a lawyer. He was once looked at for the Supreme Court. Ted Cruz, and now the clips are even coming back where Ted Cruz is talking, saying that words have meaning, and elected officials have to watch the hyperbolic language. Elected officials have to watch what they say because their words need to be clear and concise and not be able to take it out of context. So when Ted Cruz, he makes it worse when he goes on Tucker and he's like, well, no, I misspoke. And Tucker flat out called him out. And that was absolutely the right thing. He didn't even let him finish his sentence. Tucker just stopped him right there and called him out. And then Ted doubled down. Ted doubled down, was like, well, no, I was talking about specifically the attacks on the police officers, because you and I can both agree, Tucker, you can't, people attacking police officers should go to jail. It's like, okay, we'll roll with that for about 5 seconds. That's not what you effing said, Ted. You said terrorist attack on the Capitol. That's what you said in the Senate chamber. And now he's like, well, no, I was just talking about the police officer. No, you weren't. Look, man, you said that for a reason. That wasn't something you misspoke on. You said that for a reason. We don't know what was promised in the room where it happened, but you said that for a reason. So either one, you truly believe that, or two, you had to say it. You were forced to say it because you needed to curry favor with the other side of the aisle for some reason. If you want to, I understand the politics game. And I'm good with the, hey, man, I'll vote for your shitty bill if you vote for my shitty bill, so we can get this thing through and get, whatever. Like, that's the politics of it. I get that. I accept that part. What I won't accept, and I will never accept it, and I don't care what politician you are, I will never accept you labeling half of America as terrorists. I won't accept you label them as Nazis. I won't accept you label them as racist. It's complete and utter bullshit. And then people want to come out and defend this guy. People want to come out and defend Ted Cruz and be like, well, we need him, right? We need him on our side. No, I don't need people like that on my side. I don't need people who are going to shit on me 364 days of the year and then expect me to show up for them on the day, where I'm going to put a ballot in the box for them. It doesn't work like that. And I don't care if whoever gets elected, if Ted Cruz ever runs for president of the United States and he is the Republican nominee, I will stay my ass home. I will not vote for him. You can screenshot that. You can record that. You can play it later. I don't give a F. Right. And so few of the people come out and start defending Ted Cruz. Right. So Tucker Carlson, for starters, He comes out and he's like, you know, we had some words and it was a great interview and I really appreciate Ted coming on, but he's a good conservative, you know, blah, blah. I was like, done. That and the whole Biden thing that Tucker has failed to address, you know, like Tim Pool fails to address the Jack Murphy thing, the whole Hunter Biden thing. Tucker spent years running down Hunter Biden on his show. Rightfully so. And then when it comes out, they're like, nah, man, you guys are besties. You guys are making TikToks together. What's up with that? And Tucker just refuses to acknowledge it. So guess what? Tucker can get effed. Cernovich on Twitter. Cernovich comes out and's like, hey, man, I know Ted Cruz, he had a pretty bad gap, but, he's a good dude and we need him. We need him to win. So guess what? Cernovich, you can go F yourself. So last night, I'm working out. Last night, man, I'm working out. And I was like, let me listen to Bongino. Let me see what Dan Bongino has to say. Because I follow Bongino. I listen to Bongino. I like Bongino. And Bongino, man, I'm listening. And he's like, this is absolutely like, no, this is unacceptable. And I'm like, yes, finally, someone who is willing to stand up and say, no, this is unacceptable. I will not take your apology for it. And then Bongino's like, but, this is going to be unpopular with a lot of folks who are upset right now. And I'm like, don't do it, Dan. Don't do it. Don't do me dirty. And I'm literally in the middle of a workout and Dan's like, if you pull up his conservative rating, his score, I'm like, don't do me like this, Dan. Like, please don't do me like this. Don't get my 2022 off to a bad start. And then Bongino's like, we got to have him on our side. I was like, oh, so guess what? So Dan Bongino, I know you don't listen to us because, we don't matter to you, but F you too. I went ahead and unfollowed you, done listening to you. And so, of course, in this, so Luke and I are going back and over the text on this, right? And, part of it is I like to push Luke's buttons. Luke likes to push mine. We all like to push each other's, really. And, of course, Luke likes to go to extremes in his examples, that he accuses me of, right? But Luke he's actually the one doing it. And anybody watching on YouTube right now, that's that Black Rifle AK-47 in Luke's cup right now because, Luke needs, we need Black Rifle on our side because they're generally good. They say some stupid things every now and then, but they're generally good, right? So Luke's like, well, John Adams, right? So the founding, we start talking about the founding fathers. So John Adams, anybody who is not familiar with the Sedition Act, John Adams was W. Bush before W. Bush was W. Go read the Sedition Act. It was terrible. It targeted private citizens. It targeted journalists. People were beaten. People were thrown in the pokey. It was absolutely terrible. And John Adams didn't give an F. And yeah, the Alien and Sedition Act. And so guess what? John Adams, you can get F too. It was, and dude, I want a politician who will not do things like that, who will not be like, well, let me go ahead and label half of America, right? Because Ted Cruz knew when you say a terrorist attack on January 6th, that with the language that's been associated with January 6th, all that, everybody is associating that to Trump and Trump supporters. No one can argue that. And
do you think
nobody wants to stand
though?
up and say,
do you think that's the plan as we get to 2024 and the possibility of Trump that they're trying to, because we all know that McConnell and Trump and this and that and their relationship, but is that maybe a plan by the more traditional GOP members that, hey, we got to start, establishing this divide early on?
I don't know. I'm going to kick it over to Luke. I've been talking for a hot minute. I'm going to kick it over to Luke because he's done. I think he's in between sips on his Black Rifle there. And so I'll kick it over to him and he can talk about how, Ted Cruz, even though Ted Cruz calls you a Nazi on Tuesday, you should really vote for him on Thursday. Let Luke defend himself a little bit here.
Yeah. So with the Black Rifle thing, I'm an HEB coffee guy, man, up front, and I am not popular at the Randall County Sheriff's Office now when I'm walking around. Oh, you got Black Rifle, huh? Oh, I see how it is up in here. And they're like, what? Because they're big on Black Rifle. And I don't think that these guys don't have time to, follow Kyle Rittenhouse, and I guess, I don't know. But yeah, I'm not very popular there because I'm calling out Black Rifle all over the place. But yeah, Josh was for Roger. I don't know. I think that is kind of the plan a little bit. I think that the GOP, old schoolers, people call them rhinos, whatever, your George W. Bushes, Dick Cheney, Mitch McConnell, I'll lump Ted Cruz in there, are thinking this is our chance. 2024 is going to be a slam dunk, and we cannot have Trump getting in the middle of that. And Exhibit A is Dick Cheney down on the Senate floor shaking hands with damn Nancy Pelosi and all these people. Now all of a sudden, libs love Dick Cheney. They love him. I mean, we are living in freaking bizarro world when I am just like, F Dick Cheney, F him as hard as possible. That guy is the devil. He's Darth Vader. Because back in the day, I was, way back in the day, I can call myself out. I'm afraid of it. I was like, Dick Cheney, he's all right. No, man. I was wrong on that. But yeah, I mean, Liz Cheney right in there. They're all the same. I'm getting a little far afield. They're all the same. Establishment politicians, Democrat, Republican. Who was it that was given the fist bump to Kamala Harris? Was it that wasn't McConnell? That was Lindsey Graham, maybe. Whatever. After they won on the Senate floor, they caught him doing the fist bump. It's like, you people are all the same. You're all the same. So with Ted Cruz, man, I mean, I think that the guy is a little bit too articulate and intelligent for his own good. Okay, he's a politician. I don't like him, and I'll go into that in a second. But you look at the Oxford Languages Dictionary definition of terrorism: the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. I think in Ted Cruz's mind, he thinks there was an element of terrorism on January 6th. I think he thinks that there's an element of it. But he gets all switched up in his mind. He turns his lawyer brain on, his judge brain, and just his mouth starts diarrhea along with all of the stupid political stuff he thinks he's trying to do for the establishment. And he showed his true colors, man. He thinks that was a terrorist attack, according to the definition of it. And I mean, that could be debated. It depends on how well it was organized, who organized it. I mean, there's supposedly a commission on it that's supposed to be getting down to the bottom of this stuff. I'd really like to see all this stuff, but we're never going to see it. We're never going to see it. They're going to keep on kicking this can down the road. Just let's milk this for all it's worth. And maybe Roger can touch on the disgusting aspects of January 6th this year. I mean, it was just ridiculous, man.
But I mean, that's the whole point, right? I mean, Josh and Luke, I mean, would you have felt different had Ted Cruz come out and said, you know what, like you just did, right? In the legal terms and the definition of yada yada of terrorism, whatever. And in my belief, I believe they're terrorists, whatever, right? Take a stand. It is what it is. He makes that call. You may not agree with it, but I think I would appreciate him doing that more than there was a poor choice of words.
That's why the Tucker thing was so disgusting, because he absolutely does not believe what he was saying on Tucker Carlson. Well, I was talking about violence against cops. No, you weren't, dude. That's why it was so disgusting. He could have
easily come out and read the definition you just did and said, look, those folks that attacked the Capitol side, that went in and assaulted those police officers, by definition, I believe, fit the label of, terrorist attack. Yeah. Right.
I mean, okay.
And just stand by it.
Yeah.
So show me the proof. So show me the proof. Show me like how it wasn't just a riot that really got out of hand and a bunch of dumb people following the person in front of them like sheep. I just want to see the proof of it, But with Ted Cruz,
who got shot in that whole thing anyway? Who got shot in that whole thing?
Ashley
That's
Babbitt.
right.
She's
not even a cop, right? The unarmed white chick. Okay, just checking.
So back to Ted Cruz, and to dispel anything going on in Josh's mind. First of all, I think I'm gonna throw a curveball at Josh here in a second. I want to say it now, but yeah, 2024 presidential run. I just don't see it happening because of that one comment and that one Tucker appearance. It's over. But he'll 2024 is the next time that he's up for for his Senate seat is up. So I don't think he'll have a problem doing that. Now, Ted Cruz, in 2016, I did not vote for Ted Cruz. I went down the ticket, skipped over the Senate seat for Cruz, and I just didn't vote for him because of what he did at the GOP convention. Now, if y'all remember, back in the day, everyone was afraid that Trump was going to split the ticket. They were afraid that if he didn't get the nomination, he was so popular that he was going to pull a Ross Perot. The Republicans were very afraid of that. So if y'all remember back in 2016, they made this cheesy, pledge that they were all going to sign. They made a big deal out of it in the debates. Are you going to sign the pledge, Trump? Are you going to sign it? And Trump's like, I'll sign it if I want to. And I was, oh, Trump, he's not going to sign it. We all signed it. And Ted Cruz is up there, Rand Paul, all of them, Jeb, he was up there, and they all signed it. We all signed it. Now you sign it. And the pledge basically said, no matter who gets the nomination, we will endorse that person for president. Ted Cruz signed it, and Trump eventually signed it. Lo and behold, Trump gets the nomination. Ted Cruz goes up there. My blood still boils on this one. You could ask my daughter, my wife, my stepson. You can ask them all, dude. I came unhinged. That night at the convention when Ted Cruz got up there, spoke for like 10 minutes, and would not endorse Trump. And he was saying, people are tired of politicians saying one thing and then doing something completely different. I encourage all of you to. And I'm just like, and the crowd was like, endorse him. I mean, the crowd was kind of getting rowdy, and he got off the stage without endorsing him. I was throwing stuff across the living room. There were pillows and stuff, wouldn't break anything, but I was mad enough to throw things. I was so upset. So now I know now
that's politics. I can accept that.
No, that's
politics.
That's lying to your face. It's lying to your face. You signed a pledge, and now you're up there saying, I'm tired of politicians pledging to do one thing and then doing the other. You just lied. You just lied
assholes
on stage.
Dude, these assholes don't uphold their oath to the Constitution.
No.
So I don't expect them to uphold some bullshit piece of paper they signed for each other. That's the politics. I can accept that. Turning around and calling half of the United States, more than half of the United States, Nazis and terrorists and racist, like that's the shit I won't tolerate.
I understand your point, and my wife is looking at me. She is outside doing some stuff, and she can hear me outside yelling, and she's just like, tone it down.
You know what? Thank God that none of us live in apartments or anything, because all they would hear outside my trailer right now is Nazis and terrorists and F this and F John Adams and yeah. Hold on. We're onto something. I'm getting swatted, but my people, my C3 people outside are stopped. I'm okay. Chatham County Sheriff. We're good. I'm recording right now. We're fine.
I didn't know about Tucker Carlson until you guys told me that night right before the messages started flying. And I'm just like, okay. I said in the messages, I'm like, well, I'm going to keep watching him and then I started, well, why am I going to keep watching Tucker? Well, because to me, I don't go to Tucker Carlson for my news. Okay. I don't like Ben Affleck. I can't stand the guy, but I'll go to his movies because I like to be entertained. I watch Tucker Carlson for entertainment. Period. I like to hear people.
I'm sorry, I got to interrupt this. You got to go on YouTube and look at Josh's face as Luke talks, because it's the same look I have with my kids.
But the difference between so I'm like, okay, well, I'll still listen to Tucker, but I'm not going to listen to Tim Pool or in Josh's case, Dan Bongino. And there's a reason for that. And it's like Josh was saying, that's a politician. That's what they do. It's like, well, that's Tucker Carlson. He's an entertainer. That's what he does. So I'm willing to give him a pass. But in the case of like Tim Pool, I spent months listening to this guy every morning. I'm listening to him. I'm getting my news from there. I trust the guy. He seems to be, genuine. Dan Bongino seems to be genuine. But then, I don't place my trust in Tucker Carlson. I placed a modicum of trust in Tim Pool. I was like, this guy, he seems like he's shooting me straight. And I found out he's not. It's unforgivable. For me anyway. So that's the difference to me between, Tucker Carlson and Ben Affleck versus Tim Pool and Dan Bongino. Now, how about this, Josh? How about this? Okay. So let's say that Ron DeSantis gets the nomination for president. Okay, I'll leave Trump alone. No. Let's go with this. And Roger, I want your view on this too. I think I know what Roger's going to say. So let's say that Trump gets the nod. He gets the nomination for president. And Trump's like, who am I going to pick for my running mate? Ted Cruz. I'll pick Ted Cruz, my running mate. Ted Cruz would be vice president. Would you vote for a Trump ticket or a DeSantis ticket in that case if Cruz was the VP?
I would.
Jeopardy music.
No, I would. Because I'm not voting for Ted Cruz. Really. I'm voting for the president. The vice president, whatever.
That's fair enough. Roger?
Oh yeah, I have no issues with it. Hey man, it's the worst of two evils, right? You got to pick the two, and you got to say, hey, this person, which I'm all about everything what both of you said. I mean, that's what pisses me off. It's just like, and to me, there are easy way outs with a lot of this stuff. But it's like these folks, and especially when you talk about your Tim Pools and this and Bonginos, they forget about what made them popular. And you just said it. What made them popular is that people thought they were genuine. They didn't cater to the polls, and they weren't necessarily. It's like Trump, right? He wasn't, and I get he did play a lot with polls, but Trump threw his ideas out, and people liked them, and they followed him.
Yeah, and that like guys like Tim Pool got catapulted to the position that he's in, and the same thing with the Andy Nagos and the other guys that Luke brought up, because people knew that they were getting bullshitted by the mainstream media. And so they're like, hey, here's a group of guys over here who are keeping it real. They're shooting us straight. And come to find out, well, some of them aren't. So you know what? So Tim Pool, you might as well go work for MSNBC and CNN.
Yeah. He's a grifter.
Because you're not shooting.
It's even worse. It's even worse because at least on MSNBC, I know what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, CNN, I know what I'm getting.
Okay, so I know we like to, or I do at least, I know we like to hold Joe Rogan up on a pedestal. But is there any question where that guy's coming from? At this point, I mean, I don't agree with half of Joe Rogan's political stances, almost exactly half. I'm just like, man, I just don't agree with Joe on that. But he comes out and says it. I mean, you talk about he doesn't straddle a fence either, But man, Joe, please don't let us down, man. Don't let us down. Most influential media figure in America. Do not let us down.
Yeah, no, dude, and that's the thing with Joe Rogan. And again, like I go back and I'm the same way. I don't agree with 50% of what Joe Rogan says as far as his political views, but I appreciate the fact that Joe Rogan, one, is willing to sit down and have a civil conversation with anybody. He's had Ben Shapiro on his show, right? And I mean, there's very few people who are as conservative as Ben Shapiro. And two, Joe Rogan doesn't apologize for what he says. He has never gone back and been like, oh, well, you know what? Let me go against what I believe to say this to curry favor with somebody else. He may go back and say, hey, I found out I was wrong, which I can appreciate that. But he's never gone back and is like, hey, man, I don't believe this, but I got to say this because I need a sponsor, because I need to curry favor with somebody. He doesn't do that. And Luke's absolutely right. If it wasn't for Joe Rogan, nobody would know who the F Tim Pool is. So,
well, and he's grounded into what made him popular. Everybody else forgets that. People forget that what made them popular was that they saw them as genuine. And then the minute they were like, okay, now I need to change my principles, right? I need to change my storyline. I need to change my rhetoric to fit what the populace likes or what's more in line with that. They flip it, right? It gets flipped and they forget. It's like Howard Stern. Howard Stern was great because that dude did not, old Howard Stern, not new Howard Stern, and maybe even new. I don't listen to him anymore, but like old Howard Stern did not give an F, right? He came out and said it, and everybody's seen the movie Private Parts. It's like, hell, 2 million people listen to this dude because they like what he's saying. And 2 million people listen to this dude because they hate what he's saying. It's just like the guy was real, came out. It is what it is, and you either like it or not, and that's just the way it is. And I think that's why I think maybe we're all on the same sheet of music with this. But like Rand Paul, I mean, sometimes Rand Paul is batshit crazy. I don't agree with everything what he states or says, but I am a pretty big fan of him because I do think he's a man of principles, and he's pretty consistent in how he says things. Whether it's a liberal or tends to be more conservative, right?
Yeah, and it's it comes back to there was a clip out of Ted Cruz, and it was it was right before the 2016 primaries, and Ted Cruz is talking about how you know he needs to get better known in other parts of the United States, and this, that, and the other. And then after Trump becomes president, Ted Cruz is like, well, we really got to consider, I forget which state it was that he was talking about. It was like, hey, guy, the only effing people you need to consider are the people from the state of Texas, because those are your constituents. Don't worry about what the people in Oklahoma effing think about you. You shouldn't give two shits about what Oklahoma needs, what's going on in Oklahoma, because guess what? That's not your effing state. You are beholden to the people of Texas, not anybody else. So nobody gives a shit. And that's the other problem is these people, too many of these senators, they comment, and the House of Representatives as well. They come out and they're commenting on shit that's going around in the country, outside their districts, outside their states. Guess what, man? Nobody gives a shit. Keep your mouth shut. You're not beholden to those people. Those people aren't beholden to you. So you keep your mouth shut. People have forgotten that piece. So I'm gonna stop talking. I've had my share on Tim Cruz. Tim Cruz can go into the trash heap of history. He can go into the trash
Ted
heap
Cruz
of history
as well.
Ted Cruz.
Well, it does go to support their rhetoric, right? And that's the other piece of this is it supports the rhetoric that the left is spewing about January 6th. I mean, we all sat there and I don't know why they had this whole memorial January 6th that because it was just the one lady that died that, she was shot by the police officer. But, they called it, terrorist attack like 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. And then when you have somebody like Ted Cruz come out and say, basically a domestic terrorist attack, it goes to support what the left is saying. Because, now, I mean, it's like whenever you hear the term bipartisan, like back in the day, bipartisan meant not just one person from the other party, like a handful, right? 10, 15, 10, 15 Republicans agreed or voted for it, or 10 or 15 Democrats voted for it. So you had members of both parties. And nowadays you get one person from the other party is now bipartisan, right? Bipartisan support. Well, technically, I guess you had people from two parties, but, you didn't definitely have the numbers on what I would consider as bipartisan. But with that definition, with today's definition, now you have somebody like Ted Cruz saying that he basically supports that narrative. And now it becomes bipartisan support for the fact that, 6 January was a terrorist attack and, in line with 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. I mean, Pearl Harbor, come on, really. And the more they use that, again, it takes away the meaning. It's like the whole comparison to Nazis and this and that. And you talk about the Holocaust. I mean, we always talk about it. It's very touch and go on what you compare to that, because you do really take away from the atrocities that happened, especially when you talk about World War II and the Holocaust or what have you. But it takes me to kind of the next piece. For those that didn't or that were not aware, so SCOTUS. I think Josh and I don't know if Luke, you had a chance to listen to the SCOTUS briefs on this, but I'll kick it to Josh here in a second. So there was the vaccine mandates, right? I think it was for the employees or the businesses over 100 personnel. And I think there was a second piece of that. I forget what it was, but you basically had the plaintiffs going up saying, hey, you know what? OSHA doesn't have the authority, vaccine mandates, yada, yada, yada. And then you had obviously the defense, which is the U.S. government, the Biden administration defending the vaccine mandates and saying, they're legal and they're enforceable or whatever. But if you ever get a chance, and I don't think I was aware of this till the other day because I was actually looking on like C-SPAN or whatever for the Supreme Court hearing, but they do the audio, right? They do live audio streams of the cases. So I tell you, especially these big name cases come up, if you've got time, and I get it a lot of times it's during the daytime and folks can't always listen, extremely educational. With that being said, I was extremely disheartened at the plaintiff, and I don't know what lawyer they hired, but that guy, gal, that team, they need to be fired because they suck. Because a couple of things I took away from this was a lot, and I'm talking about Sotomayor, and some of the other liberal justices, they basically made assumptions that became facts. It's kind of like the Army. So in the Army, and those that served, you remember this, assumptions from higher become facts for lower, right? And that's kind of what happened here, where they were just making assumptions and the plaintiff wasn't even challenging it. I mean, what did Sotomayor say? 100,000 kids on ventilators?
Yep.
due to COVID. Breyer came out there and he gave he was trying to make this, oversimplified with, well, hey, a month ago there was only 70,000 cases a day, and now there's 700,000 cases a day. So that tells me that if we delay this stuff by one day, 700,000 people will come down with COVID. And every day we delay after this, it's going to be another 700,000 people coming in, being infected with COVID, right? Severe oversimplification for it. But the couple of key things that I take away from this, and I'll kick it to Josh and ask him what he thinks the outcome will be. Several of the conservative justices. So that was the main piece I took away from the liberal piece. Alito, ACB, and Gorsuch. I don't think I heard Kavanaugh. What was actually funny was I think two of the lawyers couldn't even be present, had to video in because they had the Rona after having 3 shots. I'm like, right there. Wouldn't you say, well, hey, this necessarily isn't as effective as what we thought because I can't come to the Supreme Court right now because I've got the Rona and I've had all 3 shots. But anyway, Alito, he started out, and I haven't heard a lot of him speak. So, or haven't heard him speak a lot. So I didn't know who it was initially, but he's like, hey, let's go into science fiction here for a second. I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this, but he's basically like talking about OSHA's authority. And he was laying this stuff on the plate, laying it on the platter for the plaintiff. Like, this needs to be what you're arguing right here. And he's like, let's pretend we've got this magic wand and you walk into your workplace and I wave this magic wand and you're protected against everything. And when you leave the workplace, I wave this magic wand and you're no longer protected against, everything. And you go on, you go home, you go to wherever you're going to go to, the local bar or whatever. And he was like, I don't think there's any question on the regulatory authority that OSHA has in that instance because it's in the workplace. But same magic wand, you come in, I wave it, you're protected. Then you leave and I can't remove that. Now you take that mandate that was for the workplace and now you are forced to take it home because you obviously can't give a vaccine back, right? Once you're vaccinated, you're vaccinated. Or once you get the jab, you've got the shot. It's in you. So it was very interesting. Like, okay, does OSHA have the authority to impose mandates that are going to affect you at home or at your local hangout or whatever? And I think that was spot on. That was a great argument. And I think he was throwing it out there for the plaintiff, and it just went over their head. They didn't argue any of it. They was like, oh, okay, yep, sounds good. The other piece is ACB. She came out and, long story short, she was like, so how long is an emergency? How long are the ETSs good for? Because normally when OSHA comes out with rules and regulations, any type of policy change, there's got to be a hearing, right? It goes through a lot of paperwork, a lot of bureaucracy. It takes a year, takes 2 years, whatever. We're going into our 3rd year of this. So she asked, like, hey, so past 2 years, going into our 3rd year, we can still use these emergency type orders? Like, well, yeah. Well, what about 4 years? So 2 more years down the road, can we still use these emergency type orders? And the government actually said, well, no, I think at that point we need to kind of go back to standard, the standard process. So I guess, it's the timeline. So you can use emergency order for 2 years. You can use emergency order for 3 years. But at 4 years, you can't use the emergency order anymore. So anyway, I want to kick it to Josh, kind of give your thoughts. I know you listen to a lot of this as well. Key takeaways from it. And then what do you actually think the ruling is going to be on the vaccine mandates?
Well, if it was solely based on the the diatribe between SCOTUS and the plaintiffs and defendants, I would say that SCOTUS is going to say, yep, it's good to go. Private employers, everybody's got to get the jab. But like we talked about, I think there's a lot more that they weigh in. So that was Alito, kind of at the very beginning, who was going to play science fiction, and basically, like you said, it comes down to OSHA and an employer can require you to wear a hard hat at work in a construction area, and you take that hard hat off when you leave and you go home. Once you get the and if you're not watching this on YouTube, you're missing right now, and I'm not even going to tell you what it is. Oh my God, dude, that is going to leave me in tears. That is hilarious. That is the best picture ever. So
hey, cover art.
yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. That'll probably be the quickest Luke's ever got the cover art done. So I love you. The so Alito was basically, hey man, an employer can force you to wear a hard hat at the construction site, but you get to take that off when you go home. Obviously, you get the jab. That you can't leave it at the workplace when you leave. Kavanaugh did ask one question, and it was very weak. It was I only very vaguely remember the question, but it was about an older case, and about the something about Congress, and he left it at that. It was one question, and Kavanaugh was like, okay, and that was it. I don't think he was very strong. Gorsuch brought up a great point in the fact that he asked the defendants. He's like, okay, well, why do you think why is Congress has had over a year to act and pass legislation, right? Why has Congress not passed legislation? And I think what Gorsuch was getting at is Congress knows that they can't pass. One, Congress can't get anything done, as usual. But two, Congress isn't going to pass the legislation because Congress knows, like, we're not going to be able to get this passed because it's not constitutional. For starters, and he was oh man, like we talked, he was giving the plaintiff, he was giving them the answers to the test by saying, hey, we are being asked to legislate from the bench, which is absolutely not the role of the courts. And dude, the plaintiffs just, they get right over their heads. In their closing argument, they came out and they're like, well, this is supposed to go into effect 1 February, and it's just going to cost companies a lot of money. And you're like, what? That's your closing argument? Like, that is your closing argument in front of the Supreme Court on something that you have been standing here, saying is unconstitutional. And you're going to be like, well, it's going to cost us a lot of money. And you're like, what are you guys doing? Dude, I don't know, man. I've seen enough Law and Order. I could have probably done a better closing argument than that shit.
Well, they didn't challenge anything. I mean, there was an amicus
nothing.
brief, and maybe I'll see if I can't post a link to it. There was an amicus brief to the Supreme Court with a lot of data and facts on this stuff. And I read through, the highlights. I mean, there's a lot of legalese in there or whatever, but what I can parse out of it, and I read through it, and I'm just like, if I'm the defendant or if I'm the plaintiff, why aren't they challenging this? Because the defendant was making claims like, well, the efficacy of the vaccine is shown, the efficacy of masks are shown, the efficacy of everything is, yada, yada, yada. And I would be like, why don't you prove it? Like, based on what? Based on what study? Again, we've been saying this for a while. I didn't mean to hijack your piece here, but it's going to the CDC and saying, okay, show me the studies that prove this, right? Show me the peer-reviewed studies. And you go on there, when you look at the county, it says in accordance with CDC guidance and their, data. So then you go to the CDC site, there's nothing published. You can't find anything. They actually cited their own stuff. They actually cited their own webpage. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's really, really in the weeds. I didn't watch or listen to it. I kind of read some stuff and, listened to a few clips on YouTube. I just couldn't believe Sonia Sotomayor. I couldn't believe it. The things that she was saying. First of all, even if they were accurate, I don't know what kind of bearing that has on the case. I really don't. They were political talking points, and I'm like, what? The Supreme Court, if anywhere, we're not supposed to get political talking points. So, I just think, obviously this is an important case, but I think it's academic at this point. I think in my opinion, I think we're in for a rough year. I think we're in for a rough few years, because people are more confused now than they were at the beginning of this thing. And people were willing to put up with a little confusion at first, to be locked down and to get a vaccine and all this stuff. But now people's worldviews, and I believe we chatted about this in our little messages, people's worldviews are coming crashing down around them. Things that people define themselves by are coming crashing down. What? I can still get the corona if I have a vaccine. If I'm boosted, if I'm double boosted, I can still get it. What? I mean, there's confusion, and
they changed the definition of vaccine because of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've always said that on this show. I mean, they didn't change it to gene therapy. They just said up to date. They didn't say fully vaccinated. You just got to be up to date on your, it's, but it's not a vaccine. And we've said that. I mean, we said that for a long time. It's a gene therapy, and it does not work well, in my opinion. It's my opinion. It's not medical advice. Like I said, it's a dangerous time. I I think there's going to be some upheaval. November can't come soon enough, in my opinion. Uh, I'm not. I don't have a good feeling. It's kind of a dark feeling right now about the state of where things are. I thought we passed around a little chat where Joe Rogan came out and said, "What do you say that the masks are the Democrats' version of a MAGA hat?" And then somebody else commented that, yeah, but only one side forces their young ones to wear it. And I'm like, whoa, ouch. Kind of chippy.
Love it. I love
it's brutal, man. I mean, so much happened. I mean, since the last time we recorded, we could probably dive in and talk for another hour. I don't know, Roger. Do you want to talk about Dr. Malone and Getter and Joe Rogan going to Getter and Donald Trump's new social media platform coming out in February? I don't know.
Well, I tell you, I do like the move from Joe Rogan because that's what needs to happen. As these folks get censored, because you have to let capitalism work. And Luke, he tries to kick me in the balls all the time. And even though I think we actually see things the same, especially when we talk about Section 230 and this and that, but hey, that's what needs to happen. These folks that have 1, 2, 3 million followers, you need to leave. And you need to take them with you because your videos are being censored, or hell, even our posts, man. Like we put up some stupid, parodies and satire, poor attempt at satire, and we get the damn COVID banner, which I thought was going to actually lead to more listens, and it didn't. So, screw that damn banner. But, maybe next time I'll report us, right? I'll report us as like, I don't know, inaccurate due to health and politics or something like that. And maybe we'll get a couple more, or hey, maybe at least the people at Facebook will start listening to us. That's probably the one listen we have out in California. But, it's time for these influencers that are out there to, as they continue to censor, go find these other platforms. So now, and I'm glad you brought up the, because he basically is on Getter now, which was formed by former Trump staffer, right, or created by former Trump staffer. He's the one that founded Getter, I think, about a year ago or maybe 2 years ago or whatever. And then you have Trump's social media platform, Truth Social. And I think they just published a hard date, right? In like February, end of February, something like that, where it's going to launch. So, I'm hoping that there aren't a whole lot of hiccups with this thing, because as we've seen with a lot of the other, social media platforms that we've been on the last year, it's like once you get 100, 2, 3, 400,000 followers on even Getter, like when Joe Rogan popped over to Getter, dude, you couldn't get on there and sign up for an account or anything. And I think that, Gab went under the same thing for several weeks. I was a big Gab fan, but like, hey man, if you go 2, 3, 4 weeks and you still can't fix the problem with the volume of users, then you lose people and you go back to what works, which right now, legacy, right, is Twitter and Facebook. But I think, I was reading something on Fortune the other day. I didn't realize like your most clicked links on Facebook, believe it or not, are conservative posts, conservative talk shows, conservative links. I didn't know that. I'd be kind of curious to see what that's like on Twitter. But it brings me back to being a Democrat right now, especially in 2022. Josh, I think for a Republican, you just sit back, right? I mean, one, have a plan. You can't F it up like you did with Obamacare, where you had years to come up with an alternative to Obamacare. You finally come in, you have power, and you don't have a plan. Like, yeah, we don't have a replacement for Obamacare. It's like you had several years to do this. So right now, the GOP just don't shoot themselves in the foot. But I mean, it's got to be hard to be a Democrat, because let's look at what's going on in Chicago right now, right? I don't know if any of our listeners are allowed to listen up in Chicago, where the teachers union is basically like, hey, man, we're walking out. Like, we are not going to have in-person learning, in-person school until everybody's wearing N95. Everybody's got the shot, the second shot, the booster, Moderna came out today and said, hey, we're probably going to need a fourth shot now. So, when you look at being a Democrat, I mean, it puts you in a pretty precarious situation, right? I mean, you're sitting there like unions, that's your big that's your big base. So, I mean, do you see a split or maybe more of a divide between the far left progressive, like the squad liberals, versus like maybe just your Pelosi's, and then what do the Republicans got to do? Especially, I mean, 2022 should be lit. I mean, politically, it should be lit. I mean, I think with the GOP, what, you just don't F it up, right? And then what do you do if you're a Democrat? What do you do if you're like you're a Joe Manchin on the Democratic side in 2022?
Well, I think for starters, if you're a Republican, you don't label your constituents as terrorists. We could start there. Uh, I love Luke's expressions. The as far as the Joe Manchin's go, dude, what are your constituents saying? What is West Virginia? What's the pulse? From your home state. And as far as the districts go, I forget how many seats Republicans need to flip in the House to take it. It's not that many. And the Democrats are. I think you're going to see a little bit of that. I think you're going to see that chasm widen this year, leading up to the primaries, and the squad type Democrats, and the old guard. I think there's some Democrat races that they're not going to be able to hitch their cart. The old guard Democrats won't be able to hitch their cart to the squad. They're going to have to they're going to have to come out. They're going to have to say, they're going to have to buck up against them and say, no, we don't go for that. We don't believe that. That's politics. And I get that. But as far as the Democrat game goes, they're gonna have to find something to run on. They can't run on the economy right now because of inflation. They can't run on COVID. That's no longer a Trump issue. That's a Biden issue. Biden himself even turned around and punted it to the states. So they can't run on COVID. The only thing right now, and I think this is why they made such a disgusting show of January 6th, was that that's all they have right now is January 6th. That's the only thing they really have to run on that they can go out and beat their drum to. I don't see anything else that they can do. And some states, some states are starting to lock back down. And if people think the economy's bad right now, you think inflation's bad right now, lock the country down again. Go ahead and lock the country down again. And the next couple of years, like Luke said, will be a complete disaster. It'll be Depression era level disaster. You lock this country down again. I don't know what cart the Democrats can hitch to right now, because it's a shit show, man. It is a literal shit show, and they have.
Well, here's an interesting thing to tag onto your stuff before you finish. So for the House, all 435 seats are up for election. So if there's going to be a referendum, right, now is the time that it happens.
Yeah. I mean, it would have to be. And I don't think they have the votes. But all the seats are up for grabs. But I still think I'd have to go back and look at the count. It's less. They only have to flip, like, I think 10 to take the House. And I think that's going to be. I think that's not going to be a bridge too far in a lot of areas. At the end of the day, man, the economy. It's the economy.
Yeah, roughly, like it's not even 10. I think it's actually less than that. So, and then the Senate, obviously, even smaller than that. So I mean, you get one and you've won, and who knows what Manchin does.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what Manchin will run. I think he's back up. Manchin, Manchin would be fine. I think Manchin right now, has drawn so much hate and ire from his own party that if Manchin came out tomorrow and said, "I am now an independent," it would not surprise me in the least. So they really have to be careful with Manchin, especially once they started visiting him on his houseboat where he stays when he's in DC. Like, when you start showing up at people's houses Like that's uncalled for. And that's going to push, that's going to push people. Um, I think in the House, but and especially the House, you got to look at the number of Democrats who have come out and said that they're not running. I think right now there's 20 to 25 Democrats in the House have come out
25.
and said, I'm not running for reelection. So those seats are completely up for grabs. So it's going to, politically, man, it's going to be lit.
I'd have to take a look at what those seats are, but yeah, it's not looking good. I think it's a big red wave this time. Speaking of which, for those folks in Texas, we're going to start doing this probably every episode. One of us will outline a state, starting with the one we're in. But just reminder for everybody in Texas, at least, 2022 March primary election. The primaries are on March 1st, 2022, and the November is November 8th. For the general. So I encourage everybody to head over to sos.state.tx.us. Just type in votetexas.gov. It's real easy. You can register to vote there. It outlines everything. So it's never too early, man. March is going to be here before you know it. Before you know it. I mean, that's right around the corner, guys. I mean, it's coming up. The season is coming. In Texas, you got the U.S. House, the governor, state executives, Senate, House, state Senate and House, state Supreme Court. I mean, all kinds of ballot measures, municipal government, school board. Don't forget to vote school board. Hell, run for school board. I like to see Admiral Dave run for school board down there. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to hit this one real hard. I'm going to hit a couple of them real hard over, until March 1st. Texas 2nd Congressional District with our favorite incumbent, Dan Crenshaw. He's got 3 folks running against him. I thought he had more, but I was looking at the 2021 or the last race, not this one. There's a guy named Jamison Ellis down there in the 2nd District. Maybe take a look at him. He looks like he's serious. Bit of an outsider. We got to get Crenshaw out of there. Crenshaw's district is 98.1% white urban. It's urban, 49% white, 30% Hispanic. So I don't know. I mean, if I'm gonna do some research into this guy, Jamison Ellis, see what he's all about. I might kick a few dollars in the kitty for him because I want to put my money where my mouth is when it comes to that.
Crenshaw ain't going anywhere.
I know, but
Crenshaw ain't going anywhere.
At least I can try to do something about it. I'm not just going to throw up my hands and I'm going to vote Cruz. 20. Josh, I think I made it very clear. I don't like Ted Cruz. I did not vote for him in 2020. I did not vote for him. Or 2016. I mean 2016. I did not. No. I do not like Ted Cruz. So there's that. I'll kick it to Roger. I do have a few shout outs to close us out if we're going to do this last round. And yeah, man, good episode. I think we found, like I said, the cover art. Good stuff. So Roger, what do you got?
No, just like Luke said, man, get out there and vote. Get out there and look these folks up. It's pretty interesting. Much like Josh said, I don't know what the left is going to run on, but I would say for the conservative side of the house, like, man, you got to be ready. I'm actually curious to see what's going to happen here in Arizona because, alongside with Manchin, Sinema's been in the news a lot because she's also been one of the holdouts for the Build Back Better plan and a couple other, she's, the whole filibuster thing. And it's it does throw it's very tough because when you look at whoever the GOP or the Republican candidate is going to be, I mean, one, you got to be willing, you got to be able to win. And that's part of, I joke with Luke a little bit. It's like, Crenshaw ain't going anywhere. The guy's got name recognition, national name recognition, and you can support somebody, but you got to be able to win. And when I look at what the GOP has done in Arizona, I mean, we gave up Arizona. I mean, we've said that before in previous episodes, but I do think this 2022 is going to be lit politically. I think once we get to March, I mean, it's game time, man. I'm waiting for the ads to start rolling out right now. I mean, I know folks with, we had a lot of snow back in the DC area. I think hopefully none of our listeners got caught on I-95, or maybe I hope that you did get caught on I-95 so you could listen and get caught up to all the Culper's Canteen Cup episodes. But, it's I'm excited to see the ads come out. I'm excited to see some of the platforms that come out. But I would definitely say, like Luke mentioned, I mean, you have to get involved in the primaries because that's who's going to determine, who represents you in the general election. So As we talked about going over these next few weeks, next month, several months, we'll kind of highlight. I'll highlight Arizona, and Luke can highlight Ted Cruz and Crenshaw, and then Josh can talk about North Carolina. So that's all I got from my end. Josh.
Yeah, I just got really one thing. So F Dan Crenshaw, and F all those people who were crying and sobbing on 95 stuck in the snow because they were ill prepared for the weather that they knew were coming. So that's all I got.
We probably do have some audience members who are stuck in that. So I encourage them to go back. Josh reposted it, our survival episode, our prep episode. So as good advice on that one. I got a couple of quick shout outs to CBP, ICE, and Texas Department of Public Safety down there on the border, highest rate of COVID. I wonder why. Those guys are still doing the Lord's work despite what you see on the news. Shout out to Ranger Robert, 10th Mountain Division up in New York, man. Thanks for listening. We're going to get you on the show someday. Robert's actually going to buy a mic so he can be on the show. So, yeah, good stuff. Shout out to Robert. Thanks for listening. And old Scotty Scott in Norman, Oklahoma, kicking it with Cypress Hill, homie. Thanks for listening, man. Always. Thank you. For the rest of y'all, thanks for listening. We'll get your shout outs one of these days. We'll get around to it. If we haven't said your name yet, we know what we're doing. We're holding you on the line. So until next time, keep your canteen cups full and tightly secured.